sales, operation, recruitment, and people matter. So, as an account leader, key strategic client for the practice. So, again, I again warmly welcome you, Mr. Arihant. And guys, before handing over to the speaker, if you have any doubts or if you want to know anything about the overall session, you can add your question in the Q&A box or in the chat box. We will during the session and the post the session we will be answering your questions. And if you still have any doubts, you can directly ping us on the chats. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Arihant.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for inviting me and introducing me. Hi, good evening, everyone. I will just project the slides. Are the slides visible?
Yes, your slides are visible.
Sure. So today I will talk about essentially sales transformation through analytics, and the industry that we are essentially covering today is more on the FMCG, consumer durables, and various other industries, which essentially do sales through a distribution channel. So what is distribution channel? So distribution channel is the channel through which, let's say, the products flow from the company to the market. So let's say if we talk about Hindustan Unilever. So let's say they've got a brand of soaps, they've got a brand of shampoo. So they are essentially manufactured in Hindustan Unilever factories. Then from Hindustan Unilever factories, these products actually go to a distributor. So distributor is somebody who is responsible for, let's say, distributing all the products of Hindustan Unilever in a particular geography. So let's say we talk about saying, let's say there is somebody who is essentially responsible for distributing the products of Hindustan Lever in, let's say, Delhi as a region. So we have got Hindustan Unilever, the products are manufactured in Hindustan Unilever, then they essentially come to the distributor. Distributor essentially is responsible for entire Delhi. And then, when the distributor essentially gives these products to retailers, so he would, let's say, go to any market. So let's say he'll go to South X market. He will essentially look at who are the people who sell soaps and shampoos. He will essentially go to those retailers and place his product, the Hindustan Unilever products, on their shelves. And as the end consumer, all of us essentially will go into that store and we will purchase from there. So this entire channel is called distribution channel in a consumer markets reference. So you have an organization who sells it to the distributor. Distributor is responsible for a particular area. So he distributes the products, or he sells those products to all the retailers in that particular area. And when essentially you want to purchase those products, the end consumers go to that particular retail shop and they purchase the product. So this is actually called the entire distribution channel. So when you look at the entire distribution channel, actually there are two sales which are very, very important. The first one essentially is called the primary sales. So the primary sales actually is the sales from the organization to the distributor. So the first set of sales that we discussed about, saying that Hindustan Unilever, let's say, selling it to the distributor for Delhi, that is essentially called primary sale. And the secondary sales is actually the sales from the distributor to the retailer. So it is the Delhi distributor who is essentially now selling to the retailers in Delhi. That is called essentially the secondary sales. So when we talk about essentially sales transformation and analytics, we actually look at essentially maximizing both the sales. So we look at maximizing the primary sales and we look at maximizing the secondary sales. Though the large focus would be on maximizing the secondary sales, because secondary sales, let's say in any industry, is is more like a real sales which is happening, rather than essentially primary sales. Sometimes is seen as like you are essentially selling it to a distributor, which is again an extension of the organization. So this is how essentially the sales is happens in our consumer market, and this is how we essentially look at it. So if we have to essentially increase sale, this is a typical secondary sales equation that exists in the market today. So secondary sales is equal to number of sales rep that you have in a particular geography. So what happens is that, a distributor, let's say, will have, uh, a number of sales reps. So he essentially has got, let's say, a sales rep who is responsible for South X as a market. He has got another sales rep who is responsible for Lajpat Nagar as a market. So the objective of this sales rep is to essentially visit each and every retailer in the Lajpat Nagar market and place the products on the retailer shelf. So you have got, so your secondary sales is dependent on number of sales reps you have in a geography. So number of sales people you have in, let's say, Delhi as a geography, multiplied by the attendance of those people, multiplied by the daily average total calls. So daily average total call means how many retailers do they cover on an average on a daily basis, multiplied by productivity. Productivity means how many visits were productive, how many calls were productive. So let's say you have gone to 10 retailers during the day and 4 people have given you orders for the product. So your productivity percentage becomes 4 by 10, 40%. So it is sales rep multiplied by attendance, multiplied by daily average total calls, multiplied by productivity, multiplied by average value per productive call. This the multiplication of all of this essentially becomes the secondary sale. So when we essentially look at secondary sale and we have to essentially maximize secondary sales, we have to essentially focus on all the factors that contribute to all these 5 elements, so as to we focus on each of those factors and we try to maximize each of those factors so that overall the secondary sales is maximized. So some of the key levers for improvement in the secondary sales equation are, so the first one we'll talk about essentially whether you have the optimum number of sales rep basis the town potential. Now let's say if we talk about Delhi, now uh, typical benchmark which is used in a FMCG or consumer durable industry is saying that, a salesman can cover about 35 to 40 retailers in a day. Right. Now, let's say if I've got 400 retailers in Delhi and I've got, and on an average sales rep will cover about 40 retailers in a day. So if I have to actually cover every retailer in a day, I would essentially need 10 sales reps who are active in Delhi as a market. So the first and the key criteria is, do I have the optimal number of sales rep in a particular area so that I am able to cover that area? I am able to actually visit that retailer, everyone. So if I have less number of sales rep, I will not be able to cover each and every outlet in the region. The next one, essentially parameter, next two parameters are linked. So this is about what are the total calls per day and what is total productive calls per day. So in terms of, how many retailers have been visited by all your sales rep, and how many retailers have actually given you orders, what percentage of retailers have given you orders on that particular day. So there are different parameters through which you actually improve your number of total calls per day and total productive calls per day. So one of the things essentially is, can we, let's say, look at the route or the market that a particular sales rep takes. So let's say you've got a sales rep and you have essentially given him Lajpat Nagar as an area and you have also given him South X as an area. But then essentially when he covers South X, he essentially travels 30 minutes to go to Lajpat Nagar, and then Lajpat Nagar, from there he again comes back to, let's say, South X is a market. So he wastes a lot of time actually shuttling between the retailers, seeing one retailer in South X, one retailer in Rajpat Nagar, one retailer in Kalkaji, one retailer in Nehru Place. So instead of that, can I essentially only assign him, let's say, Kalkaji and Nehru Place? I tell him saying that, see, Kalkaji and Nehru Place are two markets which has large number of retailers and it has a large population of people, large population of residential houses. So can I essentially tell one of the one of the sales rep saying that you only have to cover Lajpat Nagar, only have to cover, let's say, Kalkaji and Nehru Place. Now what happens, because they are only covering these two locations, so his travel time of, let's say, covering different areas in a city gets reduced. So he is able to actually cover more retailers in those two geographies, and then essentially he is also able to spend more time with the retailers. So the objective of some of these optimization is saying that, do we give, let's say, the sales representative enough time so that he is able to, let's say, go to the shop, identify who is the owner, then owner also would be selling things, wait for the time when he gets free, then he is able to, let's say, have those quality conversation for about 10 minutes, let him have, let's say, a tea with the owner. He is able to essentially, one, asking which products do you want to buy, and can I also push him saying that, okay, there are some additional products, why don't you purchase it from me? So the objective essentially of the optimization is that, my salesperson should be able to spend more time at the retailer than actually traveling between different retailers. Another factor that we essentially look at is, have I mapped the retailer and dealer universe completely in the geography, and do I review this every quarter? So let's say if I talk about, let's say again, Kalkaji as a market. So if Kalkaji has got 400, let's say, retail shops where Unilever products are sold, have I, let's say, mapped all the retail shops? And then are there any retail shops which are there in Kalkaji, but where my products are not sold? So the objective essentially is, how do I identify those retailers which currently do not sell my products, so that, my products are actually available at each and every counter. And then my products essentially, because my sales probability will increase if they are available at each and every counter. So, on a continuous basis, the objective of the distributor and his salespeople is, at every on a every daily on a daily basis, or let's say on a weekly basis, I have to also identify the dealers or retailers which have opened shop in these geographies, but I don't sell it to them. So the objective essentially is, how do you come across to those retailers? The second parameter is, how do I essentially, let's say, look at and monitor who are my unbilled retailer for 2 months. So let's say you are essentially selling it to a retail shops, and you are essentially selling your regular products to the retail shop, but you suddenly do an analysis and find that there is one particular retailer, let's name him ABC. Now the retailer ABC has not purchased, let's say, his regular shops and shampoos through you for last 2 months. And suddenly, your salesperson also forgot the retailer, he is not going to the retailer, or he had some fight with the retailer, he stopped going there. But when you, as a distributor, when you do the analysis, you realize, okay, this is a dealer ABC which has shop in a prominent market in Delhi, and which used to sell a lot of your products, but he has not been purchasing products essentially in last 2 months. So the objective essentially is, distributor will go to that retailer, have that conversation, understand what is the problem. So when you are essentially selling our products, why are you not selling the products? Is there a problem with the salesperson? Are you not happy with the service? So the objective essentially is to identify such unbilled dealers and essentially reach out to them. The next one is called, we have to identify new beats and we have to do beat restructuring. So beat actually in FMCG is the path that the salesperson would take on a daily basis. So let's say he goes from outlet A to outlet B to outlet C to outlet D to outlet F to outlet G. So what is the path that essentially the salesperson would take is called is called beat planning. So now you again look at the number of retailers which are present, and you essentially look at your beats and your sales people. So you essentially look at doing the beat structuring or identifying new beats. So you are able to actually cover more retailers, and you have to decrease the travel time of the salesperson. Um, then some of the other factors that we essentially looking at is we have to essentially enable the salesperson so that he is able to do range selling. He is able to actually sell your entire range. So there are different ways of enabling salesperson do that. So when, let's say, a salesperson go to a particular retail shop, let's name again the retail shop ABC. So he goes to the promoter of the retail shop ABC and he tells them saying that, last week you have taken 10 shampoos from me and 10 soaps from me, and all of them have sold. Should I essentially replace it with 10 shampoos and 10 shops? So there is essentially an element of suggestive ordering which is happening. So now the system itself is telling me that last time I have placed the order for these items. So I should essentially get a prompt saying that, okay, let's at least try to do these things. And then essentially system also suddenly prompts the salesperson when he is doing that conversation, saying that there are two new, let's say, fragrances of soap which have been launched, or two new variants have been launched, and two new shampoo variants have been launched. Please ask the retailer that, does he want to try these things? There are additional offers going on these retailer on these shampoos and shops. Why don't he actually takes them and presents them in the shop, so that people are actually able to buy those products also. And there is basically commercials running in TV, so people also will come and ask him for those products. So the objective is, of all these analytics is how do you enable the salesperson so that he is able to push more products to the retailer. The next one essentially is how do you essentially ask the salesperson to focus on your focus products. These might be new launches, these might be high profitability products. So the objective is, through analytics, you essentially enable the salesperson to basically focus on your focus products and sell them more in the market. The last one is around dealer schemes and loyalty programs. So in FMCG, consumer durables, and or in a typical distribution channel, there are different schemes being run. So some schemes are like, let's say you do uh, 10 lakhs of sales in a month, and we will essentially give you 10,000 rupees as additional incentive. Or sometimes the loyalty programs are basis the number of sales you do, there are essentially points that get accumulated. So how do you essentially run your dealer schemes and loyalty programs in a way that they essentially become more efficient? So the objective of the entire sales analytics is how do you focus on these levers for improvement so that they overall contribute to the increasing secondary sales. Any questions at this stage? Anything? Any question? Anything you want clarity on?
So there is no question yet.
Sure. I will go to the next slide. So see, what is happening today is that all the processes in an organization, be it sales, be it procurement, be it finance, everything happens on different systems. Similarly, the sales, when you look at a sales process in an enterprise, in an organization, there are different systems which are actually being used for recording sales. So you have got your ERP, something like, let's say, an SAP or a Oracle application or a Microsoft Dynamics ERP, which are used to capture the primary sales. Now, primary sales actually is the sales from the organization to the distributor. Now, organizations have applications like distributor management system, in short form, which are called DMS, which typically would capture the secondary sales. So there is a distributor management system, which, let's say, the distributor who is responsible for entire Delhi as a geography, he would use to punch in orders which he is getting from the retailers. So that application is called distributor management system. The third application, which is very important from a sales process perspective, is called Salesforce Automation. So Salesforce Automation is the application which actually the salesperson is the one who is using. So it will actually have details about his beat planning. So it tells me saying, Arihant, if you have to go to the market tomorrow, so you will have to go to retailer ABC first, then DEF, then GHI, then JKL. So this is the route that you have to follow. So the beat planning is there in that application, Salesforce Automation. Then it has the ability to, let's say, capture the sales order. So I go to let's say a retailer ABC. I ask him, okay, how many shampoos do you need, how many soaps do you need, how many deodorants do you need, and from that application on my mobile, I am able to punch the sales order. So typically the sales order is actually punched there and there only, so nobody takes, let's say, notes on uh, let's say let's say a handbook or a copy, and then essentially goes to the system and punches it. Typically today the order is taken via mobile. Then it will also have, let's say, a lot of fields where people can enter information. So people should be able to, let's say, capture competition sales, in what are the other company shampoos selling in this outlet, how much does the display area given to those let's say shampoos and soaps. So this kind of competition analysis is also recorded by the salesperson in the app, which is called Salesforce Automation, SFA. And then the last one essentially is there are applications like master data management, where different masters are maintained. So masters are like customer master. So you have your distributor master, you have your retailer master, you have your product master. So product master is like, every product is a different, let's say, SKU. It is called stock keeping unit. So 50-gram soap is a different SKU than a 100-gram soap and a 200-gram soap of the same brand and the same variant. So let's say you have a particular fragrance of Lux as a soap. So the terminology which is used in FMCG is called SKU. So 50-gram soap rose, let's say Lux rose, would be a different SKU than, let's say, a 100-gram soap rose would be a different SKU than a 5 into 100-gram soap rose. So when the retailer actually takes the order, he gives the order, the uh, orders are essentially taken at a SKU level. It will say 100-gram soap, I need 10, 200-gram soap, I need 5. And overall, essentially, I would need, let's say, 10 boxes of 5 into 100 gram. So these are different applications which are actually used in the sales process in an organization. The objective of analytics is, how do I combine the data from all these applications so that I am able to actually see my data across the applications, and it is able to give me actionable insights. It is able to give me analysis on the basis of which I can take certain decisions, I can take some analysis. I'll just go to the next slide. So, this is the final slide where I'm, what is the sales and distributor analytics framework that we follow. It's a KPMG proprietary framework, and we implemented at a lot of our clients. So on the left side, you have various systems in which data is punched. Like we talked about, ERP is there where the primary sales is punched. We have got distributor management system and a Salesforce automation system, again where uh, secondary and tertiary sales are punched. We have got some flat files. So the data from all these systems essentially is taken and analyzed to generate various sales matrices. So the sales matrices here in the slide, I have clubbed into 5 different sales bucket. It is like sales metric, employee performance, credit and investment, stock, and schemes. So we'll talk about each of the KPIs within this bucket. And down below, you have essentially dimensions. So dimensions are, let's say, the factors on which I am able to, let's say, uh, drill down, and I am able to bifurcate the data and able to essentially look at more granular level. So let's say if I'm essentially looking at sales, One, essentially, I look at it at a country level, saying that how many sales which I have done for India as a country. But then essentially I further drill down, and then I essentially look at, how much of sales I have done by state. So how much of sales I have done in Maharashtra, how much of sales I have done in Karnataka, how much in Kolkata, how much in Madhya Pradesh. So that becomes the next level of drill down. But then essentially, when you look at the state head for Madhya Pradesh, he would be actually interested in the further level of drill down, saying that, okay, let's say from a state level, it is okay. But I would then like to further understand how much of sales I'm doing at Indore, how much of sales I'm doing at Bhopal, how much of sales I'm doing in rural areas in MP, how much of sales I'm essentially doing in, let's say, the urban areas of MP. So these kind of essentially drill downs are called dimensions. So there are different dimensions that we use. The first dimension essentially is, let's say, the business channel. So business channel is the channel through which you sell the products. So some of the typical business channels are, let's say, general trade. So general trade is this entire distribution channel of, let's say, dealer distributor, which is essentially being used. E-commerce is the channel where people essentially sell their products online, either through Amazon or Flipkart, or let's say they essentially sell online through their own websites. There are people who do institutional sales, in terms of, let's say, they sell a lot of products to a particular institution or a particular hotel, let's say, and then essentially becomes, let's say, institutional sales and key accounts. Then the next level of dimensions is geography. So you look at let's say region, depot, city. So like the one I was saying, that you look at a India level, you look at a state level, Maharashtra, you look at a district level. Then essentially you also look at how much is, let's say, your sales by urban areas, by non-urban areas, how much is your rural sales, how much is your district-wise sale, town-wise sale, taluka level sale. So all of this essentially are dimensions by geography. And then when you essentially look at product attributes, these are things like saying, you are able to drill down by product category. So in a way, let's say I say that, overall, I have sold 100 crores worth of product, but then product category would be saying, out of those 100 crores, how much is shampoo, how much is soap. And then you further drill down by, let's say, a brand, saying that, okay, let's say out of 100 crores, 50 crores was soap, but then there are three different soaps that I sell. So how much is essentially sales by per soap? So then you can filter it down, saying soap one has a sale of 15 crores. Now soap one has got three SKUs. It has got a 50 gram, it has got a 100 gram, it has got a 200 gram. So how much is again that sales by a particular SKU? So you are able to essentially drill down from a product category, which is, let's say, soaps, to the SKU level. And then essentially you, in the same way, you are able to say pack size, brand, physical cases, flavor. So flavor and things, saying that, let's say a particular fragrance of Lux as a brand is a different soap than the other fragrance of Lux as a brand. So you will want to, let's say, look at to a level, saying that I want to essentially compare my sales of 50 gram SKU of Lux, of smell rose, of fragrance rose. So that is the level to which people go when they essentially analyze products. Then they essentially look at sales hierarchy, which is like sales office, retail executive. Then they essentially look at periodic intervals, in terms of what was my sales last year, what was my sales for the quarter, what was my sales for the last month. So these are again dimensions. So these are five kind of dimensions that we use. Now we'll essentially come to the key KPIs which are actually used in the analysis framework. So on the sales metric side, we look at primary sales. So primary sales is the sales from, let's say, organization to the distributor. So we essentially look at the primary sales numbers by quantity and value. We similarly look at secondary sales number by quantity and value. Then we'll essentially look at retailer and output analysis. So, retailer analysis, the first one essentially is, what is my width of distribution? So my width of distribution is actually the number of retailers divided by total number of retailers in a geography where my products are present. So if you look at, let's say, Kalkaji as an area, so if there are 200 retailers in Kalkaji, and I essentially sell my products to 150 retailers. So my width of distribution is 150 divided by 200, which is 75%. So the objective of essentially every organization is how do I increase my width of distribution so that my products are available at more counters, which automatically will result in more sales for the organization. The next one essentially is what is my depth of distribution. So depth of distribution essentially is whether I am selling all my products in a particular outlet. So, like the example which we are essentially taking, when I am essentially looking at depth of distribution, when I go to a retailer, whether that retailer is selling my shampoo and soap, both the things, or he is only selling my soaps, but he is not selling my shampoos. So the again the objective of organization is how do I increase my depth of distribution so I'm able to actually sell all my products at a particular retailer. Then essentially you look at what is your active non-active retailer, you look at degrowing retailer. The objective essentially is how do I get more retailers on my platform. On the product analysis side, you will do the product performance by distributor. You will do it by brand, category, pack size, like the thing which I was saying, that you look at shampoos, you look at, let's say, Clinic Plus, you look at essentially Clinic Plus dandruff, then you essentially look at Clinicus dandruff 80 ml SKU. So you are essentially able to, let's say, look at the sales at the most granular level, which is SKU in an FMCG. And then you essentially look at market share, you look at new product sales, percentage of return products. The next metrics which people essentially look at in when they do sales transformation is on the employee performance. So all the sales which you actually look for an organization is actually done by its own salespeople. So you would essentially have a salesperson who will go, let's say, from door to door to every retailer, and he will take orders from that. And when you have salespeople, you would also have, let's say, a area sales manager, ASM as we call it. So ASM is the one who, let's say, look at, let's say Delhi as a region. So he is able, so you will have one ASM and you will have multiple salespeople who report to him for Delhi as a region. So then you are able to essentially look at, the ASM and retail executive vice sales, how much is, let's say, sales being done by these guys, whether they are able to essentially do the sales as per the target, how much is the target achievement for these people, and how much essentially they are productive in terms of their target achievement. Then you also look at effective outlet coverage, you look at product recommendation, value per productive call. So when you are essentially going in the market, one of the key objective is, when I essentially go to a retailer, am I selling him large quantity? Let's say I go to a retailer and sell him 1,000 rupees worth of stock, or I just, let's say, sell him only two soaps. So the objective essentially, I should be able to do more productive calls, and my value order at every retailer should be high. Then you look at beat optimization, strike rate. The third metric that we essentially look at, what is my credit and investment in terms of how much, let's say, a distributor has invested in the organization, whether he is actually keeping a lot of your stock with him. So the objective of keeping a lot of the stock is saying that, a retailer essentially is asking for a shampoo, and then he says that, no, I don't have shampoos in the stock. So you don't, so I'll not be able to give it to you. Now what happens in these scenarios, a lot of times, retailers then substitute the thing, saying that, okay, you don't have Clinic Plus dandruff shampoo, let's say I will have some other company's dandruff shampoo, and I will essentially, whenever a person comes to me, I will essentially push him a dandruff shampoo of some other brand. So to the organization, if you look at Unilever, you have actually lost sales because your product essentially was not sold by the retailer, because the retailer wanted to sell your product, but the distributor had not given your product to him. So, these are some of the parameters that you look for distributors, saying that, has he invested in keeping stock for the company? How many businesses is he running? If a distributor is running too many businesses, then his mind share, let's say in your business, is very, very low. So how do you essentially increase that mind share of the promoter? Then essentially you look at overdue receipts, you look at check returns, distributor wise payment schedule adherence, whether the distributor is actually paying you at the right time or not. So these are various, KPIs that you essentially look, which helps you in increasing your sales. The next one essentially is we look at stock. So stock is essentially what is the quantity of the product which is lying with me. So FG range availability means that do I have all my products available as a distributor? What is my stock in transit? So what is the stock which has actually left the company, but it has not reached my warehouse or my godown? So it is in transit, which I know that, it will essentially reach me in next 1 2 days. How much is the damages of the stock happening in my warehouse? What is the quality reject stock? And then, especially for food companies, these companies do an analysis which is called avf analysis. So avf analysis essentially from a stock perspective at a retailer is whether your a is availability, so whether your product is available at the counter or not. So if your product is not available at the counter, it means if somebody comes and asks that guy, you know, I want to buy that product, and he will say that, I no, I don't have. So it's a lost sale for the organization. The next one is your product visible at the counter? So let's say I have a shampoo which is sold by a retailer ABC, but he has not kept it at the right spot. So the person, if let's say I am going and purchasing, I am going to the retailer, and if I ask him saying, give me this particular shampoo, he will give me that shampoo. But if let's say I go to that retailer, I don't have buying shampoo in my mind, but it is displayed in front of my eyes. There is a chance that, I will essentially ask him, can you give me a bottle of that shampoo as well, which is right displayed right there. So what is my visibility at the counter becomes very, very critical, because if your visibility high, your sales will automatically become high. The next one is freshness. So in terms of, let's say, products which are edible, the freshness is very, very critical in terms of whether the product is actually fresh or it is stale. So when you look at, edible products, you look at a parameter which is called avf analysis. So what's your availability at a retail counter, what is the visibility at the counter, and whether the product is actually fresh when it is available at the counter or not. The last one essentially is the effectiveness of scheme in terms of, different schemes which are given. Let's say, you buy 4 products, I'll give you one free. There is additional incentive for the retailer. So here from an analytics perspective, you actually look at what is the effectiveness of scheme in terms of, is the scheme really effective? So you have essentially rolled out a scheme in Delhi as a region, and as an organization you have spent 1 crore in rolling out that scheme. So 1 crore worth of incentive you have given to retailers. But has this increased your sales as an organization? It should not happen that you are giving schemes, so you are essentially giving a lot of money to all the retailers and distributors, but the sales of your products are still not happening. So these are some of the parameters that essentially we look at schemes. So this is the overall sales and distributor 360 analytics framework that we essentially use for doing sales transformation in an FMCG industry. That's all I had from my side. More than happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Haryan. So I like to, uh, there are few questions which we can take ahead. First
Sure.
question is from anonymous attendee, that
Mhm.
Java language is essential for data analytics.
So, see, Java language, I would say there is a lot of applications of Java in the tools which are currently being used for data analytics. So, I would not say it is absolutely essential, but it is definitely beneficial to have Java background, because a lot of programming in big data cloud platforms is done using Java.
Second question is from Divakar Joshi, that how to deal with the problem of data ownership when creating sales insight report using tool like Power BI. Most of the time when developing data model, we as a data analyst face problem of understanding business meaning of some of the entities or field which can lead to wrong insights.
Absolutely. So, Divaka, this is very, very relevant and important question. See, what happens is, so whenever we essentially talk about analytics, what happens is that context or the understanding of the industry is very, very important. So if you look at FMCG, some of these terms are very basic, saying what is a SKU is, let's say, the stock keeping unit. So if, let's say, you have a 50 gram soap, 100-gram soap, and a 200-gram soap, so these are three different SKU. So when you essentially do a analysis, or the sales actually happens at a SKU level. So what is a product line? So let's say let's say shampoo is a product line, but within those, and what is then a brand in a product line? So let's say Clinic Plus is a different brand than Dove as a brand. Then the next one essentially is, what is the variant in a brand? So let's say my Dove, let's say Rose is a different variant by, let's say Dove something else is a different variant, and Dove, let's say something else is a different variant. And then essentially it comes SKU. So the understanding of these things becomes very, very critical when you do that analysis. And one of the things which is recommended is, when you are doing the development, when you are essentially understanding these matrices, you should have somebody from the business who is able to, one, explain these definitions to you, so you essentially understand, saying that let's say in the sales, when you talk about primary or a secondary sales, the order is punched at the SKU level. But when let's say the sales head looks at, he essentially look at what is his volume sales at a brand level. He does not look at a SKU level. So how do you, let's say, convert the SKU level data into a brand level data, into a product line level data, and then essentially, let's say, a product variant data? So it is always beneficial to have somebody with the business knowledge and who is able to actually give you all those insights.
So the next question is from Anand Singh. He had asked three variant questions. One is, how do you choose companies you do business with? Then the second is, what do you do when a prospect says no? And the third is, what are the most important technical skills a data analyst should have?
Okay. So when you say that, see, when we see, typically it is done as part of our sales planning, that we will essentially identify, saying that this year we will focus on this sector, and in this sector we will essentially focus on these four, let's say, industry, these four companies. So this is typically yeah, a plan that we do at the year start. And there are a lot of instances where you essentially do show your capabilities, submit a proposal, but let's say the client does not have money, or he does not essentially, let's say, and he says no to you. He has postponed the one, or he has essentially given that project to some other vendor who might be cheaper, or who might be essentially maybe some other reasons. So a lot of time this happens, and I think you'll have to live with it, and this is probably part of the sales process. Anita, what was the last one? Sorry, I missed it.
What are the most one sec, yeah, what are the most important technical skills a data analyst should have?
So if we essentially talk about analytics, one of the most important technical skills that people should have if they are a business analyst is their understanding of the business. And then essentially from a technical skill perspective, they must learn SQL. Even if they are business analysts, they are not the ones who code. Understanding of SQL is very, very important for doing data analytics, and then essentially getting the UAT done, and whether actually measuring whether the right numbers are shown or not. So SQL is a must skill to have, and it is always helpful if business analyst people are able to essentially acquire additional skills in terms of their ETL skills, visualization skills. They are able to, let's say, learn tools like Power BI, Click, so that they are essentially able to create dashboards as well.
So the next question again from Divakar Joshi, that what are the tools and technique to identify competitive weakness in my target sales market?
So I would say, more than tools and this thing, I think it is more about the availability of data. So in FMCG as an industry, let's say you've got Nielsen data, which is essentially available at the outlet level, at the product variant level. So that essentially becomes one data. Then there are different other industry reports. Then your salesperson, when he goes from door to door in terms of collecting data, uh, typically the sales for automation softwares essentially enables him to collect data. Let's say he goes to a retailer, he is able to click picture, he is able to see that, apart from Hindustan Lever soaps, the person also essentially, let's say, carries Patanjali soaps, he also carries, let's say, Godrej soaps. He is able to essentially punch that data. He is also able to punch, let's say, what is the visibility, whether essentially the Patanjali soaps are highlighted or Unilever soaps are highlighted, or let's say Godrej soaps are highlighted. So all of data, there has to be a culture where people essentially capture this data. And I think the capture and the availability of data is more important than essentially tools. So you can essentially use any tool. You can even use, let's say, Excel or SQL to generate insight. But I think the availability and capturing of data becomes very, very critical in this.
So moving ahead, there is one more question from Divakar Joshi, that how to deal with unexpected demand of certain product and what are the way to prepare in advance.
Uh, See, this essentially, Debaga, this becomes again as part of your strategy, and then essentially sometimes you essentially comes in your forecast. So whenever you essentially look at, let's say, sales as a process, uh, what happens is before the year, typically people will come up with, let's say, a forecast for the next year. The forecast essentially is basis my historical trends, and it is also basis the seasonality that I have, the number of other parameters that essentially affect uh, my, let's say, sales. So I essentially prepare a sales forecast, and now my production is actually aligned to the sales forecast which I give it to them. So if I say that, I would need 100 liters of shampoo in the month of January, so the production also is aligned to actually make 100 liters of shampoo in the month of January. But then if there is an unexpected demand that essentially comes in, there are two things that you do. One, essentially you consult with the manufacturing people, the production people, and then you ask them, see, there is a lot of product demand which is coming up. How much can you produce? Think that your target was to produce 100 kg, can you essentially produce actually 120 kg? So that essentially, because the product is available to you, then you essentially channelize your the entire distribution channel in a way that the product actually is available to the right salesperson to sell. So in the sense, if the market demand is coming from Madhya Pradesh as a geography, so you should also allocate the extra, let's say, goods produced to the salesperson who looks at the entire Madhya Pradesh, rather than essentially assigning it equally to everybody. So that's the way that you essentially look at unexpected demand. You may not be able to, let's say, uh, look at each and every scenario on an unexpected demand, but you have to essentially work within the limitations of production capacity that the organization has.
So the next question is from Samir Vyas. He is a management person and can he do the data analytics course?
Absolutely, Samir. So, data analytics as a course, I think it is used in every function at every level today. So, people should know essentially, data analytics. If they are in a position where they take a lot of decisions, they should know how do you essentially get data, how do you look at matrices, how a basic data analytics essentially is used. So that basic courses there for everybody. Secondly, if you want to be a developer in the field, if you want to essentially make your career in data analytics, you can go to a more complex courses which tells you about the tools and the techniques to do coding. It tells you how to use tools in data analytics. But data analytics has become a key necessity for everybody in the organization today.
So yeah, Anand Singh again, where he's saying, thank you sir for my answer, for your answer. The last question from his end is, what is Power BI?
So Power BI is actually data analytics tool which has a lot of visualization capabilities. It is a Microsoft product. So Power BI essentially enables you to, let's say, make different visualizations like charts, like let's say donut chart, different ways where you can visually look at your data. Let's say if I want to essentially look at my last 3 months sales, and I want to essentially compare with the sale with my let's say sales last year for the last 3 months. So I essentially, let's say, create a bar chart where all the this 3 months sales is actually there, and the last year numbers are also there. So I'm able to essentially visually compare the numbers there. So Power BI is a tool in which creating these visuals has become very, very easy.
So here the last question from Ashish Sharma, that which tool is more beneficial in analytics?
So Ashish, the way the industry is actually doing, everybody is moving to a cloud data lake, big data implementation. So big data implementation typically, happens on cloud, and there are three major cloud providers today. So Microsoft Azure, AWS, and GCP. Uh, and then essentially you have on-premise versions of, and there are some other tools like Cloudera, Hotnots as well. So I would say, cloud data lake, Databricks, these are the places to go. And it will be actually more beneficial for people if they essentially uh, learn more of these skills from an analytics perspective.
So here in the chat box we have few questions from Yashodatta. What is the main difference between data scientist and data analyst?
So the main difference essentially in a data scientist and a data analyst is, when you essentially talk about data analyst is somebody who is very good in understanding data, who essentially brings a lot of context with respect to industry in it. So if I am essentially, let's say, looking at sales from a FMCG perspective, he will essentially, let's say, look at from a SKU level, from a product line perspective. He will essentially look at, let's say, a product category perspective. He would create different let's say cuts of data and show it to, let's say, the relevant sales head, relevant brand head, in terms of how the data is doing. Now, data science is a guy who essentially use more the data science techniques to come up with let's say new models which create data which is used in an organization. So in a more simpler word, let's say you want to look at sales forecasting. Now a typical sales forecasting would have different elements to it. So let's say your weather is a important, let's say, element to it. Season is an element to it. Availability of product is an element to it. So all these data scientists is the one who would essentially use values for all these parameters and create a data science model on the basis of which, let's say, a forecast is created. So data scientist essentially goes in that direction.
So one more question from Samir Vyas, that he don't want to make his career in IT but in analytics. So what are the programming language he should learn in data analytics?
So I would say that if you want to make your career in analytics, and you don't want to go essentially in IT, first you essentially need to decide that which area in analytics do you want to go. Do you want to essentially be a business analyst, or do you want to actually be a let's say a coder, system integrator job, the one who essentially codes different platforms, or do you want to be a data scientist? So your programming languages again would be different for that, but generally a lot of things are happening on the cloud data lake platform. So uh, so learning a lot of skills, doing a lot of certifications in that areas will certainly help people.
So we have new question from Mr. Harish, that is data exchanged between production and sales real time?
So Harish, different policies are followed by different organizations. Typically it is not real time, and it is not possible to have it real time. Typically this is done maybe once a week. So there would be, let's say, a monthly forecast which is shared by production so that they can align their production. But then there would be, let's say, weekly, bi-weekly meetings on which these any changes to the production and the sales forecasts are discussed. So this entire planning is called in an area which is called SNOP planning, sales and operations planning.
So here we will take one more question, which will be the last for the day. It's from Monalika Gupta that I am from economic background. Can I pursue data science course and will get a job?
Absolutely. So in fact, I think economics and data science make a very, very good combination. So a lot of jobs are available on the econometric side, where large complex data science economic models are made to analyze data, and these are becoming very, very mainstream today. So any, let's say, organization level, when you look at parameters, you look at KPIs, economic parameters have become very critical today. I think that would be a great combination to have.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Aryan. It was, and to all the participants, it was quite a good and informative questions which you have asked. And thank you, Aryan, to giving such a wonderful knowledge about the overall session, the about overall what is data analytics, business analytics, data scientists. So yeah, there is so much to learn from your end. And again, we can do this kind of webinar by in the next month itself, where if you have more questions, you can come up and we will be taking one-on-one questions again in the next month. And again, if you have any doubts, you can, if you want to learn more about data analytics or you want to be a professional in the data analysis, you can go to the Imarticus website. You can check our new latest program. Few of them are job guaranteed, few of them for the certification. Depends on your work experience. And you can check. Yeah, there are few of the sessions we are going to again conduct with KPMG in India. So again, I'll send all the details with you via email and the SMS. You can again join for the session and we can have a good conversation again. Thank you so much, Mr. Arihan, for taking such a wonderful webinar today. It was a great and informative session. So I, Anita Gaur, would like to sign off for this webinar. So again, if you have any doubts, anybody, you can directly get back to us via email, or you can go to the website. You can do the chat with our current counselor, and you can get your query resolved. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thanks. Signing off for the webinar.